Hello and namaste. Welcome to another episode of the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Tarot Journal and Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour. I am your host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. Blah, blah, blah. That did not warm up his tongue-tied tongue. I am your humble and sometimes quite trippingly on the tongue twisted host, the incorrigible Mr. Zeppo. And you'll forgive me, folks, it's been a very long day. Which, if you've been following along, I've done this all today live, back-to-back with some breaks in between to spare myself and my voice. Have already rambled quite a bit at you about stuff and things and ideas and such. But now here we are, gathered together for a really specific segment of the show, which is probably the one most immediately rejected by anybody who's sort of like, what's this podcast all about? Oh, wait, what? But that's neither here nor there. Cartomancy. Scary sounding word, I'm sure. But truly, all we're really talking about is asking the Logos for guidance, right? We did a big long bit today about Logos, and it's no accident that I went off on Logos. It's something that I've referenced, I think, throughout the show from its inception, and might be considered one of the central pillars of the thesis being synthesized by your humble host. And yeah, why do I mention it here? Just as a touchstone for anybody curious, anybody brand new to the show going, what are we doing? What are we talking about? What is all this mumbo jumbo about oracle readings and such? If matter, everything in the known universe, is being made manifest, literally sung into existence by the Aum of God, as one theory or one philosophy puts it, then everything in the universe that is matter is ultimately the Logos in action, right? Is the reasoning and the consciousness of God making it so, making this object be that object and that object over there be this object, etc., etc. And if that is the case, then it shouldn't be that terribly difficult to get really good advice from a collection of objects that were consciously designed by other humans, which are carriers themselves of this Logos. They are embodiers of the Logos, as we all are. It shouldn't be that kooky, right? It shouldn't be that weird. And in fact, there's a whole community of people out there in the world that in one way or another is essentially agreeing with that thesis or working with its ramifications. The notion that a collection of pictures, words printed on cardstock, can render meaningful guidance through the interacting thereof between, my mind and the artist's mind, etc. Right? And to that end, I have been obsessive-compulsively acquiring beautiful little artworks, beautiful little collections of artwork each of which has been, through conscious choice, intended to be used as such a wild, a crazy idea as an oracle, a divinatory tool, a system by which we may allow spirit guides, or whatever your favorite name for that etherical essence might be, to speak through the collaboration of artist's mind and our own asking of questions, etc. And as Alan Watts points out, any system sophisticated enough, with sophisticated enough moving parts, can render that function of oracle. So here we are, welcoming two mass-produced, manufactured, probably, yes, indeed, this one is printed in China. And the other one, let's find out, probably also. Catch-22. Oh, Hay House, same publisher, how funny. Hay House and Hay House. So yes, although I don't see a printed in China disclaimer here, this one is also probably printed in China. Not that I'm judging, right? But I do like to acknowledge the flaws or seeming inconsistencies, right? This is a product of the globalist machine of taking over the world through creating nonsensical markets, as a very jaded, cynical viewpoint might claim. Conversely, whatever means by which these images and these words were gathered in this collection of cards and printed, it is possible, it is within the realm of possibility that these individuals meant well and used statistically significant modalities of expression or of cultivating that this product in their artistic renderings. Speaking of which, let's talk about which decks we're introducing today. I have two final decks. I haven't bought a new deck in a really long time, and I've been in sort of this pregnant pause of no longer actually very actively collecting, because there had been a huge stack of these boxes of stuff I'd bought, which of course I could be really instantly critiqued for, right? But let's not get hung up there. And I'd been wanting to process them in a way. I'd wanted to open them and capture my thoughts in a podcast episode about their first impression, to kind of follow through on that backlog as best I could, given that I had been not doing a very good job of that previously, up until that time when I was like, oh, well, I better really kind of focus on that. And I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I did it wrong. I'm not really sure what the quote-unquote right way to do this would be. But I guess that's neither here nor there. Today, my friends and devoted listeners, although, please note, I don't ask for that, right? I don't ask for your devotion. I just acknowledge that there's a few of you out there listening quite consistently, and to that I say thank you. Today, my friends and listeners, I am welcoming two decks. Two decks that I've been excited to get a look at, finally, after having bought them quite some time ago and owned them and kept them together in some sort of prolonged, absent-minded, sort of passive, quasi-spiritual ritual of letting it sit on a shelf next to other decks, right? Here we are. This deck is called the Goddess Power Oracle, and it is attributed to Colette Baron-Reid, and illustrated by Jenna Della Grottaglia. Cool. Italians, both of them. Shanti Om Namaste. Thank you for joining this little collection deck. On the back of the box, it reads, "The goddess is calling upon you to open up and reconnect with the universe in all her forms." I have to pause there, friends, and admit something to you. I had never really read the back of this box. I didn't know what it was going to say. I knew I needed to get this deck when I saw it on a shelf somewhere. And I can't remember if it was at my favorite crystal and, spiritual bookstore, crystals and spiritual themed bookstore, the Crystal Cave down in Costa Mesa. Shout out, real life, genuine, 100% unpaid for endorsement right there, folks. If you are in Southern California, if you are in the OC, stop in, say hi, tell them that Mr. Zeppo sent you. They're a really cool store. I like them. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of others around that are super awesome. I don't make it a business of visiting these stores. Perhaps someday when I've got a big fat budget, I can. And I can interview all the owners and I can ask them deep probative questions about how they feel about, the commodification of divine guidance into these delightfully beautiful products, which simultaneously are kind of like, why is there an industry of this? And yet, thank God there's an industry of this. And yet, I don't know which way I feel about it. But that's a whole, future theme to explore way down the road. I want to come back to this first sentence on the back of this box because I didn't know it was going to say that. And to me, it's a little breathtaking because anything could have been chosen as that first sentence on the back of this box. And I want to point something out before I go off on this sentence, and that's that these are the two final decks, and they're the ones that I've been really waiting for, especially, and that they've always felt like they belong together, because this one is the Goddess Power Oracle, and the other one is the Mystical Shaman Oracle. And the Mystical Shaman Oracle, although I'm sure has lots of femininity in it, it is both by the same publisher, and I honestly, genuinely had not noticed this. This is another collaborative project, and Colette Baron-Reid is in it, is right in the middle of the three names. Illustrated by the same artist, Jenna Della Grottaglia. And maybe I've noticed this before, and maybe I'm an idiot, but right now in this moment, I'm like, that's kind of wowzers. I don't think I planned that. I honestly don't want to claim that I planned that. So the Mystical Shaman Oracle, illustrated by Jenna Della Grottaglia, created by Alberto Villoldo, I think. It's Villoldo, Villoldo, and Colette Baron-Reid and Marcella Lobos, or Marcella Lobos. Not sure. Italian names are a little iffy for me. Masculine, right? This has got a lot of masculine energy. It's always read that way to me. It feels like it's going to be steeped in indigenous people. Both these decks are going to be very much in tune with ancient tribal peoples, and that this is going to be somehow a little bit like cosmic masculine, shaman, right? Man. And this other one, goddess power, feminine, divine feminine. And I got a little startled there, but I forgot that I had Insight Timer running in the background because, believe it or not, folks, when I record my podcasts, I treat that as a form of talking meditation. I try to really sublimate all ego impulse and only speak from a joyful place of light, and I don't mean that trivially. I mean that as profoundly as possible, and consciousness. So light and consciousness. But anyways, this sentence: the goddess is calling you. The goddess is calling you to open up and reconnect with the universe in all her forms. at the center of my personal life experience, my dear friends, is that idea that the greatest, overlooked, most misunderstood, and most powerful thing going on right now is goddess, feminine, divine, is rising or returning or, resurging, and is definitely calling to us, the human species at all, every one of us, from Trump on down, to the lowliest of the low, to the ugliest in the hidden shadows, to abandon all ideological constructs and, heal our ego and reconnect with her, the feminine divine in the universe in all of her forms. Why would that be happening now? Well, I don't know. Because we spent the last 3,000 to 5,000 years obliterating her, slowly chipping her away from all the stories until, actually, that's mostly been, in the shadow of the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church, as dear old Karen Armstrong catalogs quite clearly, the Catholic Church, in its usurping of the Christian traditions as it established itself vis-a-vis the death throes of the Roman Empire, and the collapsing of the function of Caesars, tried to, the Catholic Church, being the vestiges of that whole machine, tried to eradicate the divine feminine. And so, quite honestly, after 3,000 years of that, humanity is starved, quite thirsty, hungry, malnourished, for lack of communion with divine femininity. And the oversimplification, hyper-vilification / personification of divine masculine into all these cardboard cutout, two-dimensional cartoon versions of itself. But I digress. Right. Let's take a look at this deck. I'm excited. I'm not even going to read what the rest of that says. The rest of it is, pretty natural marketing language that stems from that main thesis. If that's the primary thesis of this collection here, this volume of intellectual work, then the rest of it unfolds quite logistically or logically. It says, the feminine aspect of the universe is rising to restore balance in the world. Will you answer the call and receive her guidance? Who could we become if we knew how to reclaim our true power? There's a question. Is that trite? Does that become trivial? I don't know. But the deck goes on to describe itself as a collection of goddesses from cultures around the world. And then it references a few of the goddesses. And then it gives a bio of the auteur, Colette Baron-Reid, who is described as an internationally acclaimed spiritual medium, oracle expert, and author of numerous best-selling books and products published worldwide in 27 languages. All right. Cool. And she's been on Oprah and Dr. Oz and Dr. Phil. All right. I've never seen any of her appearances, but I must say she knows how to pick a really great box. And I don't, her packaging for this deck is both well constructed and functional and pretty and tactilely satisfactory. And I like these, whereas some decks come in boxes that would fall apart in a hot second, and some decks come in boxes that are inconvenient to use. I don't know. This one's got a nice it should it's just functional, and I like that sort of thing. I'm a big nerd about boxes. Inside the lid for the box, it reads, the mystical, the magical, the numerous quality of life. Oh, the numinous, not numerous, pardon me, that was my misreading. So, the mystical, the magical, the numinous quality of life is the domain of the fierce and creative feminine aspect of the universe. And the back of the book is a beautiful sort of like faux engraving that's got the 3 phases of the moon, witchy witchcraft thing with a Celtic tree knot worked into the middle where the moon, the whole moon is. The book is it's well constructed, it's pretty, it's elegant, it's made to be able to sit on a bookshelf and look nice and not, it's a little bit just higher end than, no offense to the other little white books. On the inside of, this came out in 2018. Okay, so I guess I have not had this deck for as long as I think I have, but I feel like I've had it for at least more than a year. But it's 2018. I must have gotten it early in 2018 because I know I got it and I put it and I was like, I'm not going to open this for a while. I put it on the shelf and I was like, hang out with all these other decks. I'm not going to open any of these for a while. And there was already a pile of decks there. But I digress. There's a quote which I'd like to read from, and I hope they don't mind. If anybody sues me, I'll please send a cease and desist letter first. Don't just start suing me. I have no money. I haven't made any money doing this yet. But I digress. That's not the point. Here we go. Beautiful quote. On the quote, where one expects to find a quote after the contents. The world of humanity has 2 wings. One is women, and the other is men. Not until both wings are equally developed can the bird fly. Should one wing remain weak, flight is impossible. Not until the world of women becomes equal to the world of men can success and prosperity be attained as they ought to be. Now, that sounds like some celebrity said it in the post Me Too movement of whenever the heck year that started. But that is a quote from the life of Abdul Baha, head of the Baha'i faith, who lived from 1892 to 1921. And if you've never heard of the Baha'i faith, they're actually quite a lovely religion, spiritual faiths, practice. They're sort of existent in that realm where they still embody all of those things. They're still really strong on practice, whereas Christianity, in its most decadent forms, is really weak on practice. But that's neither here nor there. Baha'u'llah had some beautiful, epic things to say. And of course, as with every founder of religions, there are people who point to controversy and say, oh, discredit. At any rate, I think that's beautiful, and I think it is correct, and I think it is apropos, and I think it correlates and synergizes with the theme of the podcast today, which is, as anybody who's listened to all the episodes I've recorded on this particular day, politics, political ideology is a distraction from our true spiritual calling, and ironically uses, the mechanism of 2 wings that are competing against each other in such a way as to prevent you outright from flying. The reason politics goes nowhere is because the bird of politics cannot fly, because the 2 wings have pretended to make themselves each other's enemy. And if the left is the enemy of the right, and the right is the enemy of the left, and each believes the other to be wholly corrupt and only their own wing to be righteous, how will the bird ever fly? Ever. I digress. From the introduction of this deck, page VII, little tiny lowercase Roman numerals, Also, I really love the fonts. The font choices in this book are up my alley. I wish I knew the name of the font being used. I'd slap it in my own work. I'm just going to read the first paragraph to give, a nod to the author introducing their work. In October 2017, I was having one of those wondrous periods of creative channeling, bringing oracles to life that I'd been hoping to work on for years. While talking to my publisher about different themes I might feel drawn to, they suddenly brought up the idea of a goddess oracle deck. Before I said yes, however, I knew I had to give it some careful thought. After all, I had not been attracted to any goddess-based oracles I'd seen up to this point, wishing for one that better reflected my language and the current state of the global shift in the psycho-spiritual and social experience. All right, I'll go ahead and read the next paragraph. As I started to skim it, and I was like, I might as well just give into it. She continues, as I give, I believe this is, right? This is from the author, Colette Baron Reed. And it's quite a long introduction, actually. Yeah, okay. So, as I gave the idea of this new deck the consideration it deserved, it occurred to me that the mystical, the magical, the numinous quality of life was and still is the domain of the fierce and creative feminine aspect of the universe, which was once deified as the goddess. My forehead began to tingle every day, bringing to mind old memories of the sign of the blue moon I'd paint on my face as a child, while I told my mother I'd be a priestess or a nun one day. So this offer made me think perhaps the great goddess wanted more from me now. I look forward to actually indulging into a good deep read of her introduction for myself and how to work with the deck, as most books have that sort of how to work with the goddess power oracle deck right there. So she goes on to explain a few spreads attributing some of the, let's read some of the spread names. The 3-card Goddess Power Council spread, the special guidance spread from Goddess Mnemosyne, Mnemosysne, the 4 Jewels of the Goddess spread, and then another one. She's got one more. Oh, a couple more. The Full Moon Illuminating spread, the New Moon Intention Activation spread. Okay, and then she's got a couple of more bits about interesting things, that she would suggest to anyone working with this deck. So then it goes right into the goddesses and their meanings. In alphabetical order, I presume. Maybe not. The first one is Anine. The next god is Aphrodite. Goddess number 4 is Artemis. Goddess 11 is Demeter, right? So on and so forth. Goddess 20, Hera. Goddess 24, Isis. Goddess 29, Lilith. Each one has a word underneath. Lilith had independence. Demeter was the nurture, etc., etc. And there are, how many total? I think it was 52, right? 51, 52. Yes. The final card is Yuki-onna, stillness. The Japanese goddess of winter, Yuki-onna, calls you to practice a daily meditation and stillness to prepare you for greater productivity and results. And there's more things there. There's some books for suggested further reading. Let's read that, because I do always love a good bibliography. Find Your Goddess, How to Manifest the Power and Wisdom of the Ancient Goddess in Your Everyday Life by Skye Alexander. Goddesses in Every Woman, Powerful Archetypes in Women's Lives by Jean Shinoda Bolin, MD. Goddesses in Older Women, Archetypes in Women Over 50 by Jean Shinoda Bolin, MD. Myths of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Chalice and the Blade, Our History, Our Future by Rianne Eisler. Shota and the Star Quilt by Christine Fowler, Margaret Bateson Hill, and Gloria Runs Close to the Lodge. Oh, that must be a tribal American Indian name, or indigenous. Gloria Runs Close to Lodge. For a second, I thought it was a different book. And Philomena Lakota. Oh, I know Philomena Lakota, or at least I know someone who goes by Lakota. I have heard that name before, I guess is really all I need to say. The Living Goddess by Marija Gimbutas. The White Goddess, A Historical Grammar of Poetic Myth by Robert Graves. Ooh, even a dude is allowed to write about goddesses. Hooray! Weaver of Worlds, From Navajo Apprenticeship to Sacred Geometry and Dreams, A Woman's Journey in Tapestry by David Jongward. Jongward. Jongeward. Must be like Nordic, Swiss or something. The Lakota Way, Stories and Lessons of Living by Joseph M. Marshall. Oh, duh, of course I've heard of Lakota. It's a tribe, isn't it? I'm a putz sometimes. I apologize to all Lakota for having been a putz just then. Anyways, Dineji Nitin Navajo Tradition Teachings by, I hope I pronounced that right, but I probably butchered it. Navajo Traditional Teachings and History by Robert S. McPherson. The Alphabet versus the Goddesses, The Conflict Between Word and Image by Leonard Schlein. That's an interesting sounding one. The Great Cosmic Mother, Rediscovering the Religion of the Earth by Monica Sjoe and Barbara Moore. The Spiral Dance, A Rebirth of the Ancient Religion of the Goddess by Starhawk. And When God Was a Woman by Merlin Stone. Go read those books, people. They sound like pretty groovy books. So then she's got a really lovely acknowledgement section and a bit about the author, which I've already read. Cool. Hay House has an online app for getting card readings. I didn't know. I'm going to have to get it. Here's an... maybe it's only for Apple. It says available in the Apple Store. I'll have to go check. Hay House/apps. They also have a free e-newsletter. If you're into the decks that I read about or share with you about that are Hay House, go sign up at their thing. Okay, I've been going on forever and I haven't even looked at the deck yet. Good grief, guys. Why do I ramble so much? Okay, here we go. Much ado about everything. Here's the exciting moment. Oh, wow. Talk about like the packaging just continues to be exciting in terms of just being a little bit, a cut above. So there's a box inside that box underneath the book, and it has the deck. And on the inside cover of that box, the box inside the box, it reads, "Magic is everywhere, and the goddess will help you claim it." And there's this lovely red ribbon to help you pull the deck out of the box, which I really love. And in the box that the box of the deck comes in, there's a lovely red ribbon. It's all very beautifully designed and in that way, somewhat fractal, because it's like boxes within boxes that remind you of the previous layer. Here we go. They've got that lovely band holding them together that I don't want to rip. Ha! Here it goes. Voila. So this deck is got a sort of photorealistic mixed with like art, water, pastel sort of art vibe, graphic design look. I like it. It's bright, it's vivid. It's got a nice kind of matte finish, so it's pleasant to the touch, and the pictures are pretty, and they clearly photographed actual people, actual women for this. These aren't, I don't think, just drawings. I think, well, maybe, I don't know, it's hard to tell. The faces have photorealistic or approaching photorealistic qualities, but then there's also just a lot of graphic, rendering. I'm not sure what the right word there is, but I like it. And I feel like it's going to be, once I get to know the archetypes well, it'll be easy to take readings with. And here's why I say that. Myself, as you might recall, dear listeners, the only reason I'm on this crazy Kookmeyer journey is because at one point in my life, long ago, long before, there's Freya, number 15, Radical Acceptance. A tribal Celtic redhead. And, yeah, no, they all represent, show and, oh yeah, they have the word, and so, like, they're just going to be fun to read once I get into the details of Colette Baron-Reid's interpretation of these goddess archetypes. But what I was saying, long ago, Om Shanti Metta Shanti Om Namaste. Long ago, when I was young, you all might remember from some previous episode in my podcast, the story of me contemplating the mythology of jazz musicians striking a deal with the devil for their success and fame and fortune, etc., etc., etc. Long story short, I thought that was quite redonkadonk and refused to even, contemplate it any further in terms of the devil, but realized right away that if I were to seek out otherworldly assistance in this manner, that the only appropriate, correct, and worthy choice from my point of view to seek assistance from was obviously Mother Earth, Goddess, right? Gaia, and that no other being or deity would be a particularly savvy choice, because who else in the pantheon of known deities has got as much of a vested interest in our well-being as the very mother, the very womb herself that is giving birth to us? Well, I'm gonna stop this episode and call it part 1 because I've certainly went on for a quite bit longer than I anticipated, as I am wont to do quite often, right, friends? And we're going to come back in part 2 to welcome the final deck. And the reason I'm going to go ahead and make that push, make that effort, because I want to knock this out of the park, clear it out, and then I'll talk to you in greater detail about the next phase of this ridiculous. Because if you're only listening to the Incorrigible Mr. Zeppo's Tarot Journal and Cartomancy Radio Reading Hour, as of right now, of all the episodes, you must be going, when is he going to start taking readings? He's just saying hello to these decks and rambling. And yeah, that's true. But that phase is now coming to a close, friends, with this pursuant part 2 of this particular episode, where we will unbox and take a first look at the Mystical Shaman Oracle, which is Colette Baron Reid, who's the author and you know, a collaborator with Jenna Della Grottaglia on the Goddess Oracle deck that we just welcomed. But what I think will be a kind of counterbalancing masculine vibe here. Let's see what the first line of that box is. On the back of the box for the Mystical Shaman Oracle, it reads, "Legends say that before there was time, before there was language, there were the sacred symbols." The medicine wheel, the curse, the eagle, the jaguar, and others spoke to us intimately. These countless manifestations, they offered hope, expressed caution, illuminated opportunity, inspired creation, courted power, and shared knowledge. The sacred symbols belong to the realm of archetypes and the collective unconscious, the spirit, common ground shared by peoples modern and ancient. So stay tuned for part 2, where we take a look at that deck. Thanks for tuning in, friends. I will be right back after a brief break. Contains material that may or may not be considered appropriate for the average Trumptopian household. So I totally screwed the outro on that, didn't I? Let me just go ahead and pause that right there. That was the unauthorized and explicit readings outro, and I meant to push this one right here.